Corona is here to stay, and that's what our leaders, our scientists, and our social people are telling us, and which is true. And we have to learn to live with it. The normal, which was normal till date, will never be normal. And again, new normals will be the normal. So every normal will have to sit. The idea here is that we have to be ready for change, and we have to think out of box for new methods, adoption, new technologies for clinical research, clinical trials also. The way traditional clinical trial which we have been doing, enrolling subjects, sitting in the bed and then watching them and then doing every day monitoring, calling patient every week, every day, or whatever protocol says, versus can it be decentralized clinical trial, which is people are thinking about it. You send the patient at home and it will be trial conducted at home, and the people will do by the healthcare professionals, healthcare workers. There is intensive use of artificial intelligence in clinical trials so that you can develop, predict, and collect the data, collate the data, and large number of data can be collected, and then you generate hypothesis. The issue of adaptive clinical trial, you change the protocol, amend the methodology, amend the number, depending upon the progress of the trial, depending on the results which you are getting with the help of DSMB. Such out-of-box thinking is the need of the day. And this out of the thinking will come from young generation, I believe, more so. Now, the COVID-19 clinical trial challenge, if I say, I put them into three categories. One is new clinical trial, which are almost stopped globally. Only few enrollment are taking place. The two for very, very small trial. Ongoing trials is an issue. Ongoing trials on oncology, diabetes, hypertension, and there are challenges from recruitment to the stage of regulatory decisions. Every stage there is an issue. I will address that. The issue of clinical trial on COVID-19 is another issue because there is no clear regulatory process. And there is guidelines are now coming up, though as simplification as possible. And I would say everybody is trying to do study with the objective that they will find the drug vaccine as fast as possible. And with that, some deviation of the clinical trial protocol is possible. But then some people say that all is fair in love and war, and this is war against humanity, therefore protocol deviation should be ignored. I would say this statement should be used with caution, but certainly people are looking for that. I will talk about on a decentralized clinical trials and also remote trials. That is, trial site is actually patient's home, and the investigators are healthcare professionals. And intensive use of smart technology will reduce the unnecessary contact of the patients to healthcare workers, to doctors. Advantage is avoidance of physical contact, and particularly these are basically almost contactless trials. Presenting data quality and data integrity, preserving is an advantage. Data sharing, particularly when you are doing a multi-centric, couple of people are involved, and the data can be shared with confidentiality in place. Increasing importance of real-time evidence, that is also now being considered to be taken care of. Needs simple protocol can be done, and online training of healthcare professionals is important in this case. Trials conducted with participants remaining at home, this is an emerging concept, and maybe future you will see that. Important thing is also to understand compassionate use. And this is important because many drugs you may see against coronavirus are used as a compassionate use. And we had a 3-workshop brainstorming on making policy regulations for compassionate use. And these were done by ICMR, AIIMS, and THSTI, and also CDSCO officials were involved. Incidentally, when we were finalizing the guidelines, this compassionate use in corona started coming. So we will be soon coming up with the regulation. And this is basically patient access to investigational medical product, still investigational, not approved, on compassionate ground. And there is a need for policy and the regulation in India, which will soon be coming out. In this compassionate use, we must identify what is the difference between the clinical trial and the drug use in compassionate use. In a clinical trial, the primary objective is research. The primary objective is research. Whereas in compassionate use, primary objective is the treatment. But however, when you are doing treatment, even with the compassionate use, if we are using treatment in a standardized protocol method, everything is documented, done in a professional manner, then this information can also be used as a research outcome or as a... Now the issue is who can apply for compassionate use drug. It's 3 important things. One is the individual patient has to give consent and he has to apply that he has to willing for the compassionate use. Group of patient or cohort, that is intermediate size, can also apply, and a widespread use, larger group. This is what we are happening today for corona. After phase 3 is completed but approval is awaited, couple of drugs could be repurposed, and that is where widespread use application can also be considered in today's scenario for repurposing. And this you can see the compassionate use, lot of issues have been debated recently, paper appearing in BMC, paper appearing in most journals, important journals, and in China, FDA solicits comments, and we are also on the verge of finalizing our compassionate use guidelines and policy. The issue in compassionate use is ethics and social challenges. The important thing is this has to be reviewed by ethics committee and justification has to be clearly provided. Why you need this drug which is not approved and does it likely to benefit the patient? And the top thing remains the patient's safety. One cannot compromise the patient's safety here. Cost to patient has been an issue, and it is basically the philosophy that the sponsor or the industry may not give it free. It cannot be forced. But then we recommended in India that to the patient the cost should be free because this is still an experimental drug, even though this is compassionate use. Now, who will pay for this? I think this is a matter of debate, but the government of India will agree, or the companies can be approached to provide the drug for compassionate use. So regulations in India are yet to evolve. USFDA regulations, key approval in such cases has been in 4 days, and 98% of the applications have been approved. Rarely in compassionate ground applications are rejected, and almost 1,000 applications per year. It's also important sometimes that which phase of development of these drugs they are. For serious disease, data from phase 3, or if the data or the evidence is compelling, even from the data from the phase 2 can be utilized. And you know, the bedaquiline is one of the story where we approved on the compassionate ground even when it was not approved for marketing authorization. For immediately life-threatening disease and more preliminary clinical evidence is case-to-case basis. All they are basically the regulator approved on the case-to-case basis, considering the potential benefit and the potential risk on that. The regulatory dilemma in this compassionate use, because you will be discussing this on and off for COVID, data has no influence on decision making on marketing authorization application. So you generate a data and you find that this drug is effective, applicable, useful, but then this data cannot be submitted to the regulator. And the logic is that this data has not been generated on the designed protocol, and therefore this is not acceptable. And we have to think out of box again. In current scenario, where compassionate use is detailed protocol driven, should it not be considered valid for market authorization? And that's what we have to debate with the regulator, we have to debate with the scientists. And my suggestion would be that in all investigators, compassionate use users, please do it with extreme caution and with care and full documentation recording so that your results can also be utilized by others. Cost and finance, the decision to charge the supplies rest with the manufacturer is still the manufacturer, because he has made the drug not yet approved, and therefore we cannot ask them. An actual cost of manufacturing supply, many industries have agreed that they will provide free of cost. They will provide at actual cost depending on the drug and the country and the scenario and the understanding. In India, opinion in our ICMR, AIIMS and CDSA meetings was very clear that this should be given free of cost to the patient. One important thing which I would like all of those who are attending this to be understand is academic trial. Because many drugs we are repurposing drugs and are using for COVID, they are academic trial. People say that this is for academic trial. So I will just repeat the definition of academic trial. A trial of a drug already approved for certain grade and initiated by any investigator or any academic or research institution for new indication, new route of administration, or new dose or new dosage form. If this is established drug but we are using for new indication, new route, we are getting inhalation route, a drug people have proposed on COVID that they want to give a drug for oral drug, then now they want to give it inhalation, a couple of such new doses. Now they want to give it a higher side dose because this was given as a mega dose, safe drug, but then the dose is different. New doses form, nanotechnology based drug for COVID. These are the, this can be considered as academic trials, where results of clinical trial are intended to be used for academic and research purpose and not, capital not, for seeking approval to regulatory authority for any country for marketing or commercial purpose. This is a catch. That it is important that the clinical trial done on academic trial basis, the data cannot be used for submission to the regulator. And but this is again a debatable question, that if you generate with so much effort clinical data, what will be the use of doing this? But as on date, because this is not fully understood, the safety is yet to be established completely. But can this drug be used by masses? That is the question. Repurposing drug is nowadays majority of the drugs for COVID-19 are repurposing drugs and or repositioning or reprofiling. It is a strategy for identifying new use of an approved drug for investigational drugs that are not in the scope of original medical indication. And you may see that lot of drugs are now being repurposed for cancer, repurposed for epilepsy, repurposed for now hundreds of drug people are looking for repurposing against COVID. And they have been tried for repurposing. Now, conduct of clinical trial in situation COVID-19. What should be? What would happen to the trial? So, realizing this, we had a discussion, and DCGI has issued notification on 31st March. This is given on the website, and this says that because of the issues on ongoing trials, such as difficulties in adherence with respect to various activities, recruitment of trial subjects, laboratory testing is sometimes difficult, administration of investigational product because the patient is not getting the investigational product, the consignment are delayed, the issue of reporting of SAE because we have a very strict timeline, and that timeline is not being adhered because of the meeting takes place and the causality assessment is to be done. Schedule visits is the important thing because the person is supposed to come to the site, and because of the lockdown, the transportation and all those, fear of coming to the hospital, the visit is difficult. Assessment of safety and efficacy, therefore, sometimes becoming a challenge. And therefore, DCGI has issued a direction, which is important to understand, that consider the protection of rights, safety, and well-being of the trial subject as the most important issue. And you must also ensure integrity of the clinical trial data. So the patient's protection, rights, safety, and well-being, and the data protection. If you can do this, ensure, that is the most important thing. And then it is recommended that, it is advised that sponsor, investigator, and ethics committee, these are the three pillars today. Of course, we leave the regulator. They should make in coherence and coordinate each other and decide whether under this situation trial is to be discontinued. And many trials have been discontinued because the results will be fallacious, or you want to continue but you want to change the protocol modification because of the lots of issues. This can be done today at the level of ethics committee, investigator, sponsor. Document this and then inform. There is no need to wait for ethics for the approval of DCGI. It is important that we must understand adaptive clinical trial design. I am not going to the detail of this. Maybe we can have a seminar separate on adaptive clinical trial design. Increasing use is happening today. And adaptive trial design is that which after the initiation allows modification in the trial design, in the protocol design, in sample size calculation. You have to recalculate the sample size because you thought that you will be able to do in 600, but now it is only 200 which is available. And therefore, you have to redesign the protocol, statistical method to be applied in trial which were not there at initiation without undermining the validity and integrity. The bottom line is that validity and integrity are the most critical thing. The purpose is to make the trial more flexible, efficient, and fast. When we say flexible and fast, the efficient word is the mosaic, that you have to make efficient only, then flexible and fast. And for this, I will read again a DCGI notification which is on 19.3, which is also now on website, is to encourage R&D, research and development of drug or vaccine for prevention and treatment of COVID-19. An application of to CDSCO will be processed on high priority. Now they are now working 24 hours a day CDSA will provide guidance on regulatory pathway without calling as a pre-IND meeting for which the normal fees is 5 lakh rupees. You can get a free guidance. Protocol of repurposing. If you have a protocol for repurposing of existing drug or existing vaccine, you submit it and the review will be done on priority. But I would recommend that when you submit the document, it must be thoroughly checked for all information at critical points. Application for clinical trial and import or manufacturer drugs is also done at expedited process and accelerated review. So the normal time, which used to be months for getting the clinical trial drug in India, should be done within a week's time. And accelerated approval of COVID-19 in any country is expedited review if it is already done, and they should be much faster. So this notification basically deals with very fast working process for any application related to COVID. It's also important to understand the notification's other points, that the data required for animal toxicity, data required for clinical study, data required for a stability study, etc. may be abbreviated. You need not to do everything depending on and differed, or it may be waived off depending on case-to-case basis, depending on the nature of the drug, depending on the plant source from which you are getting this extract and the experience of hundreds of years of that plant. If this is considered to be safe, the real life evidence gives you a level of comfort, then perhaps the data of animal toxicity clinical trial for clinical study can be abbreviated, and this has to be decided by the experts of SEC members or the regulator. Application for manufacture and import of drug, vaccine, and test analysis used for bioequivalence bioavailability study in clinical trial is to be processed in 7 days. And you can appreciate 7 days is a time pressure to the regulator, but they are doing it. Emergency import license would be granted without registration, and I think that is an important issue. Now, I will talk something about challenges of clinical trial in COVID-19 drugs. There are issues in investigational product. What investigational product you will consider as standardized, the doses form, because it can be either target-based molecule or it is repurposed. When it is repurposed, the issue comes that what dose you are going to be using. When it is a target-based new molecule, can you extrapolate the in vitro data? How much reliability with this? You have less effect of that, and you have to work very fast. The important consideration when you work on this, and also regulator will look into this, how it is being positioned. And I will give you a scenario. Is it positioned as a prophylactic for high risk population? Means the patient is asymptomatic and he requires prophylaxis. For example, that is healthcare worker and immediate contact of the diseased person. Or you are doing for treatment of moderate to severe disease. Now this will determine the patient inclusion-exclusion criteria. And this will determine the other parameters. Also, how we are positioning is, are you positioning this as standalone as a viral load reducing agent, or as a standalone for fighting or prophylacting the agent with the immunostimulation, or you are positioning this an adjuvant to some drug which the patient is giving. And this adjuvant can be of different system, allopathic versus homeopathic, allopathic versus Ayurvedic. A lot of people are doing this. You are positioning this as a primarily antiviral drug. This will reduce the load of virus from oropharyngeal and nasopharyngeal sample, or you are positioning this will boost the immune, which will take care of the corona by itself, or we are putting this as the mechanism of antiviral and immune boosting both. These are the things which one must decide before the protocol writing and analysis. It's important for all those doing corona, because I have been seeing the protocols as a member of expert committee task force of DBT, DST, ICMR, and SERB, that people do not do this exercise and then becomes problem for evaluating the properly. So identify gap in the data and the information and try to fill what critical gap need to be filled in, what information need to be supported with through the literature or through in vitro data or through in vivo data, and perhaps 2-3 experts, your friends can yourself say that now we have a case. It does not necessarily mean that you go to the regulator to understand this. Your own wisdom, you can argue that now it is the case to can we go to the animal, can we directly go to the human being, considering that this is a serious situation. The important issue would be the extrapolating data from in vitro. That is something difficult, and I would say even high dose than what you extrapolate is justifiable sometimes because the risk is much high and the possible expected benefit is more, but then you link it with a strong pharmacovigilance activity. The challenge is also inclusion-exclusion criteria. This may depend on how the drug is positioned, and that is serious condition, critical condition, or it is usually treatment means usually hospitalized patient or prophylaxis, the subjects which are HCQ, healthcare worker, healthcare professionals, or it is a quarantine subjects, participants. Patient with comorbidities such as diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and other chronic disease, some people say that they should be excluded because they are more vulnerable. But this will be an ethical issue. But because they are vulnerable, they have equal right to get a treatment which is more likely to be beneficial. And therefore, this is an ethical dilemma, and I would be optimistic not to exclude diabetic patient, cardiovascular patient, hypertension, and let them continue with their disease, drugs, and also be part of the clinical trial. Study design is an important issue. Randomization sometimes is a dilemma, because if you are randomizing, one patient will get drug which is not a standardized drug, not a standard drug, but a recommended drug. On the other hand, investigational drug which is a potential benefit. Now, it is possible that many patients who are at the apprehensive of their terminal stage, maybe they may say that why I am being denied it. And so therefore, this is a dilemma, but this has to be done with absolute consenting process. I am not going to detail consenting process because our next webinar will be on consenting process and also on ethical issues. So the randomization will preclude autonomy of patients in making a choice of therapy, and this must be preserved, autonomy. If he does not want, if he wants alternate treatment, let it be there. Randomization, no randomization is the second issue. Individual patient's interest must prevail. Methodology is second thing. For a critically ill patient, you will find understanding of the randomization procedure difficult, and that's why this has to be taught very carefully. Sample size calculation in design is very difficult sometimes, because for sample size calculation you expect that this much is the standard care giving and my care is giving more 10% or 30% better result, and therefore you calculate the power of the study and the difference. Here you do not have an idea because you have no standard drug available today. The comparator is also experimental drug. This is also experimental drug. Therefore, sample calculation sometimes is a challenge. Efficacy endpoints. Now, if you see the COVID papers, there are several efficacy endpoints people have used. Mortality. What is the ultimate mortality in one arm and other arm? reduction in the viral load, nasopharyngeal or oropharyngeal, by RT-PCR or by the antibody titer, or time to turning nasopharyngeal swab, time for complete recovery of the symptoms, duration of hospital stay, and time of non-invasive ventilator support, and so on and so forth. Many people have used one endpoint and a couple of people have used a couple of endpoints with the marker also, cytokines also. So that depends on what you want to study. My suggestion would be try to keep the protocol simple and doable. Key issues here would be the handling dropouts. The dropout in the issue is a major issue, and if the dropouts are more than 50%, the possibility of the study going out of hand is more. The issue of missing data is important because the people may not return 100% compliance, and that is why the inaccurate and inconclusive decision. Investigator product issues, supply, inventory of the investigator side, and this is also an issue for the drug trials which are being done during COVID time. So this has to be issue. Issues with ethics committee. Ethics committee may not have full information of investigational products because these are the either repurposed drug or the drugs which are being investigational or for the purpose of compassionate use. We do not have complete biochemical analysis or the data, animal data. The comparator may be also empirical and unestablished. There are endpoints are variable. The on-site monitoring is difficult because the investigator, if the ethics committee wants to go to the site, it will not be permitted. The monitor will not be able to go there. Yet, the ethics committee has to make what is called as a reasoned decision. And complex is urgent decision. Many times in HCQ, the example of HCQ trial was given ethics approval in just one day. So such type of pressure on ethics committee is there because this is urgency. And in that case, the ethics committee must be strong in intellectual input and must be strong in taking decision. It may not be even full committee. Role of DSMB is very important. Must constitute DSMB, and this will be a safety guard. And also as an adaptive trial if you want to reduce the number, if you want to change the protocol. Issue of informed consent will be dealt with. It is also important sharing results of trial. This is something very, very critical and very, very tricky. This is a moral obligation of to share the results as soon as possible because you cannot wait for 6 months or 1 year to share the results, because if this is found to be effective, then 1,000 people, lakhs of people globally will use it. But the premature information, incomplete information, sometimes leaked into the newspaper, sometimes newspaper just sniff and publish it, may be misleading because lakhs of people will start using it without understanding its benefit or the risk. You might have seen the manuscripts, a lot of manuscripts are intentionally or not accidentally, intentionally leaked. And these manuscripts are at the stage of review. And once you submit a manuscript for a good journal will immediately reply to you, yes, we have acknowledged, and it is in review process. And this is just a review process. It does not mean that the journal will accept it finally. It does not mean that your article sent has meeting all the requirements, but it could be strong article or it could be garbage article. But then you have leaked it and into the entire world. This can cause some misleading perception and information. Intentionally leaked information, and this has happened particularly in COVID case. I'm not going to narrate that. So the important thing is people like you, me, and policymakers must take judicial review of this. So, having said all this, what I was thinking today morning, how can I summarize COVID? And my summary to you is, which summarizes philosophically all my understanding, COVID-19 can affect all. COVID-19 can affect all. All want to fight. Have idea, bad or bright. Lots of people are coming with idea. Hundreds and thousands of people have idea, bad or bright. Clinical trial, the way I have mentioned, different type of clinical trial, different precaution. Clinical trial has to decide which best to choose. There are more than 300 drugs being investigated. And which to keep aside. I repeat, COVID-19 can affect all. All want to fight. Have idea, bad or bright. The clinical trial has to decide which best to choose and which to keep aside. Thank you very much. I thought that this lecture or talk will prime you for research questions. And I'm very happy that today we have more than 500 people registered on this. This is our first attempt from almost 20 states and 6 countries. And I'm again apologetic for initial glitches in the IT. And my colleague has identified few questions which have been common to most. And the questions, many questions, and those will be the questions as FAQs in our. Please do.
The protocol is interrupted. So, how do the efficacy assessment be done?
I think this is an important question. I think a couple of people have asked, you said, that if the follow-up of a protocol is interrupted because of the person is not able to go, the person is has an apprehensive of going to that, the risk of number of patients less and the missing data, inaccurate conclusion. The issue is, challenge is how to make best fit line. So this is what a science, that how you can handle the missing data and still derive the meaningful information. Can we do something with the surrogate markers? Also, if some conclusion is done, then the PSUR and the PMS studies will be important. So that is, there is no guarantee that your missing data is very large and then it will be acceptable.
Okay, so the next question has also been asked by many participants. It is that some clinical trial sites are not allowing CRCs to enter the COVID ward. In such a scenario, how to manage the data at site?
Going to COVID ward by anybody else than the authorized healthcare worker is not permitted, is not good, because this is a risk to him. What can be done? So the first thing is, don't go there unless you are authorized. But the solution could be that the e-solution, you take the scan copy. If you want to keep the record, ask the healthcare worker to take a photograph from the mobile and use that as a record system. If you want to talk to the patient, perhaps the mobile application can be the best thing. And this is what is being considered now. But definitely, one cannot go to the COVID patient unless this is a critical information you want to see.
So the next question is that due to lockdown, clinic visits could not be performed. To Do we need to report all these as deviations?
Yes, this is a deviation, because if anything is given in the protocol that you have to come every 7 days or every alternate days or after 15 days, and the patient is not able to come because of the lockdown situation or anything, but reporting to DCGI may not be essential at this stage. That is the relaxation with the DCGI's notification has mentioned. But it is important that you discuss with your ethics committee, investigator, and the sponsor. These three should meet together and then do the protocol amendment, the trial process amendment, note it down, and at the end of the protocol, end of the study, inform the DCGI that these have been the protocol deviation, which was unavoidable, and this is acceptable in today's scenario.
The next question is, how will the issues related to informed consent be addressed in COVID-19 related clinical trials?
I always call that informed consent is a kamjor kadi of clinical trial, and this kamjor kadi is still more weaker in such emergency issues. Reason is the person is in a critical stage. On one hand, he thinks, what is the possibility of my going to critical stage? What is the possibility of my death? More apprehensive. In that situation, his giving a consent is a difficult thing. So it is, and the second thing, challenge which comes is if in a situation where the COVID patient is sick, his entire family, who is the LAR, is also sick. Who will give this? So people are thinking about is patient, if he is not able to give its authorized legal LAR, legal authorized representative, or if that is not available, maybe you have to think about what is the acceptable LAR, and that is the solution. But in detail, the issues will be dealt with in the next webinar.
Another burning question is that why are we promoting clinical trial with expensive drugs like remdesivir, etc., when you are the heading of the National List of Essential Medicines, which is basically based on affordability of medicine?
Difficult question. Though I am chairing the National List of Essential Medicine and we decide on the safety, risk, benefit, and the affordability are the primary criteria, and health technology assessment also does the cost of the treatment, cost of the management to the society or to the therapy. To best of my knowledge, for COVID intervention, whether it is for investigation, for diagnostic, or for treatment, or for vaccine, as on date, this analysis has not been done. And I would also say that perhaps this is not the time, it's the so critical time when the people are dying to discuss about the cost of life. Maybe at a later date, once there is a treatment available, couple of drugs are available, we can do the health technology assessment or the cost analysis.
Last but not the least, the question is, all fundings are going to the corona drug research. Will it not affect the funding for other research?
I think this is a question which I myself have no answer. But I see that as the day, as the nation, as the world demands today, that we have to work for any possible solution, drug, vaccine, preventive strategy, immediately, and therefore multiple efforts, whatever efforts is possible, has to be done. All resources have to be pooled, all intellectual brains have to synergize and try to find out the drug as early as possible. Funding should not be a bottleneck for this. However, the question which you have said, that once we have excess of funding diverted to this, the money pool for rest of the research will definitely be reduced. And I am proud to be member or to be citizen of the country where our Prime Minister has released a 20 lakh crore rupees as an supplement, as infusion for restoring everything to normalcy. And that is what I think our research will not suffer. Research will get also the similar strong funding to take our innovations higher and further. I would, however, caution that the funding which used to come from venture capital may get slightly affected, because that is, and the caution I would say to all scientists is that now is the time to think critically what research you are doing. Is it me too research, useless research, or it is just research for publication? You have to have critical analysis. And I ask two questions to all funding asking people. So what? If you are doing a research, so what? Does it have any value? Does it have a nation's importance? And then I ask the second question, what next? Have you thought of how there is a translational ability, how there is this going to improve the basic knowledge in the science? If these two answers are not satisfactorily provided or not thought of, perhaps you don't deserve funding. Therefore, all funding has to be now ruthlessly cut, which are going to useless funding. But at the same time, funding must be strong for encouraging science in the right direction. And that, I say, it is the science which will make progress for the country. And I think that is what our Prime Minister also emphasizes again and again. So thank you very much. And I assure you that your questions which you have asked, we will try to answer. Some of that we have already answered. We will put our website and we will meet you again after 15 days for our next webinar on ethics in clinical research, particularly on COVID. And we will give you the announcement of our future webinars and questions. I seek your comments, except that of technical nature, because that was unfortunate today, will not happen next day. I hope so. Thank you very much. Namaskar.